Please.
Mr. Ellerby?
Here.
Ms. Franklin?
Here.
Ms. French?
Here.
Mr. Prethridge?
Here.
Mr. Brecken?
Here.
Mayor Snavely?
Here. If you would like to join us, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And could I now have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any changes? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The agenda is approved. We'll move now to public participation. Our first item is appointments to boards and commissions. We have one vacancy on the Recreation Board. It's a 3-year term, which would be ending in 2026.
I would like to nominate Jacob Young.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of the nomination indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, and we'll move now to public comments. At this time, anyone wishing to address council on items that are not on the agenda, or if they're on the consent agenda, this would be your time to come on forward, state your name and where you live for the record, and we will give you, regardless of your opinion, 5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move then to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items to be removed? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Consent agenda is approved. We'll move to resolutions. You may read the first one.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Energy Harbor LLC for the procurement of electricity generation for the City of Oxford's electric aggregation program for a period of 24 months.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and you're going to take it?
Yes.
Doug?
So the city's current provider for our governmental electric aggregation program is Energy Harbor LLC. The contract will expire with the December 2023 billing cycle. In order to secure updated rates, proposals were requested from 5 companies for the city's program. 3 PUCO certified residential electric suppliers responded to the August 11th request. Those 3 were Energy Harbor, Constellation, and Dynegy. The pricing from Energy Harbor LLC was the lowest and best pricing for each contract term length requested, 1, 2, or 3 years. I'm recommending that we enter into a 2-year agreement with Energy Harbor LLC. I'm recommending the proposal for 2 years, and this will be for 100% renewable energy with no termination fee, no monthly fee, and is 100% renewable. The rate that we got Friday, 24-month rate, is 7.12 cents per kilowatt hour for renewable and 6.73 cents for traditional supply. Since the rates change daily, I will get a rate tomorrow morning and I will send that to you. I don't expect it to be much different than this rate tonight, given our experience. If anything, it might change by 1/10 of a cent or less. So, as you know, our current rate is 4.71 cents per kilowatt hour for renewable and 4.62 cents per kilowatt hour for traditional. The annual savings to an electric consumer using 9,000 kilowatt hours per year is $253.80 compared to Duke Energy's price to compare for July 2023 at 9.94 cents per kilowatt hour. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much.
can I ask just a question before going to public? There were two other companies that responded to the request for proposals. Could you provide, what were their rates for the comparable 2-year term? What were their kilowatt hour rates?
The other two were Dynegy and Constellation, and Dynegy did not submit a 2-year proposal. They only submitted a 1 year and an 18-month, and their rates were higher for those period of time than Energy Harbor.
How much? What were they?
So you want the 18?
Yeah, I would love to know just the number
Sure.
for comparison.
All right, so the 18-month price is 7.199 cents per kilowatt hour. Whereas Energy Harbor for the same 18 months provided a 6.99 cents per kilowatt hour. Constellation for 18 months was 7.683 cents per kilowatt hour for 18 months. And they did provide a 24-month pricing, but it was slightly higher than Energy Harbor. Their 24-month price was 7.79 cents per kilowatt hour compared to Energy Harbor's 7.12 cents per kilowatt hour.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Okay, thank you very much, Counselor. David, I assume you had something to say. Oh, yeah, you do. Come on, Peggy.
Sorry, I'm tripping.
I didn't see you raise your hand, so I didn't know you were there.
I was trying to get it out of my pocket. Peggy Brandstrader, 18 Meadow Circle. I think I support taking this contract, but I would like to put on the record the information that Energy Harbor is the new name for First Energy, which was the company that was responsible for the $60 million bribe of Larry Householder and a $4 million bribe of Sam Randazzo. So I recommend this with distaste, and I think we need to recognize that we're doing business with, a less than reputable company at this point. Also, they are under a delayed prosecution agreement, so they may still be in court. I don't know if that's going to affect their business, but I think there's some potential risk there because we're not done hearing about that case. There's going to be more indictments. We just haven't had it yet. But I do think that needs to be in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address this resolution? Okay, counselors?
So that was kind of my question. I was anticipating, and I will say fearing, that this would be the outcome of the process. Because, I don't know how other people view, I don't know what to do but for the city of Oxford. If I were a customer who was looking to power my house, I would be looking at the rate, but I pay attention to the kind of corporate social responsibility of the companies that I'm doing business with. And I would just say, as an individual, if I had the choice and it were my money, if I were weighing 7.12 cents and 7.6 cents, both of which cheaper than Duke, I would not go with Energy Harbor. I mean, I feel like our political system in Ohio is so broken, and if I could point to any corporate entity, this would be the one that I would point to as having helped corrupt our legislature. So I don't know whether to hold my nose for 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour or whether, this is a decision for all taxpayers and rate holders, and that's why I hate that this is such I wish I had more input from the community about what kind of choice they would like to make if they were individuals. They can opt out of this, certainly, but I guess I'm just saying, having looked at the other companies, I don't know how you compare, as Jason's point was, is a wreck is a wreck, and they're hard to trace the provenance of them exactly. If I were a customer, I would get on Constellation's website and feel good about the company that I was doing business with. Whether that means I'm going to vote against this tonight or not, I'm just saying that we're doing a business with a company that I think many people in Oxford would either hold their nose or pick a different supplier just because.
Doug, can you respond to that?
Well, Energy Harbor is, of course, the generation spinoff of First Energy. And, yes, they could suffer some damages, some claims. The executives that were responsible for the bribery are no longer with the company. So I guess I just looked at it from the fact that, let's do the best we can for our citizens. I mean, there's probably, over 2,000 employees with Energy Harbor, from linemen to substation engineers, so on and so forth, that were not involved in it. And of course, this is only buying energy, and we're buying energy, from a company in Texas. And of course, Energy Harbor then purchases the RECs. We don't purchase them, but that guarantees that they can't sell that power to another city or company that's coming to us. So I understand that bribery scheme, I think, troubles all. It still has some parts that should be undone that the legislature hasn't addressed yet. But I guess that would be my recommendation, is to go with Energy Harbor because it has the best rate. I think we have a responsibility to our citizens as well to do the best we can. Keep in mind that by selecting green energy, it's not the lowest rate. I mean, we could go with the fossil fuel alternative, which is 6.73, but we wanted to have green energy in our program, and we're unique in that respect. If you look at some other communities, they don't require that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to address this before we vote?
Yeah, I mean, I would be amenable with going with Dyne Energy at 18 months. I think it's close enough so my worry was if the price difference was large enough, we would lose buy-in, which would defeat the purpose. But I do think there's merit to incentivizing and de-incentivizing bad practice by supporting or not supporting certain companies, and I agree with David and Peggy. Energy Harbor is absolutely terrible in terms of what they did and the giant bribery scandal that held us back in terms financially, climate-wise, and in many other ways. And so if there's a comparable alternative, which I think there is, I think I'd rather go with that.
Well, if I could add to that, I would not go with 18 months because we need to do either a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, because we've got a cycle of students moving in, moving out. We don't capture them in 18 months. I mean, we would be asking for the updated list a year and a half from now. I mean, that's the challenge that we have. We're probably 60% of our electric customers are students that when they move out, it goes back to Duke standard service offer. And when the students move back in, they have to then, depending on when our letter goes out, either call to opt in, or if they get the letter, ignore it, and they're in our program. So I would not recommend an 18-month agreement. I mean, we'll be back at this, before we know it.
Well, is the
Doug, have we had any problems with Energy Harbor under the last contract?
No, I mean, we have, I have some parents of a student, they're wondering why their students weren't on the program, and I'm trying to figure out what happened. The process is basically, we have to notify Duke that we want an updated customer list. So Duke provides that, and we pass that on to Energy Harbor. You're not on the list if you've signed up with another supplier. You're not on the list if you're delinquent on your bill, and there are a few other reasons that escape me right now. So we get this list from Duke, and we pass it on to Energy Harbor, whoever our supplier is, and then we send out a joint letter from us, and I sign it saying, here's the rate. If you want to be included on our program, you don't have to do anything, just ignore this letter. Those have to go out once a year. Okay. Those will probably be going out in 2 months.
So I guess the question is, how long do we punish the successors, and to what extent do we do that when they really did a decent job for us in the past, and the people who are responsible for the bad behavior are gone from the company. But I get what you're saying, and I totally understand it.
So to me, I'm just using an example, and I think that there was not enough decision. I mean, we received this staff report. I wish there was a little bit more lead time. So, for example, our environmental commission could weigh the benefits and research the different providers, like, so that this other constellation has a renewable energy credits program with Cook County in Illinois, but they're taking that rec and directly investing it in the largest solar energy project in Illinois in history. So it's not local and regional, but it's, you know, it's, the recs can't be traced, but there's a purchase power agreement. So I'm just using that as an example of, like, when I'm, again, if I was a customer and I'm gonna Google Energy Harbor and what I find, and then I Google another company that seems to reflect my values, I guess I'm just saying as an individual, it would be worth 0.5 cents more kilowatt hour to me, especially since it's cheaper no matter what than Duke. But those are values choices, and we're all making those, like, we're trying to make conscious decisions as a consumer. We just happen to be making it for, like, everybody. So, and again, because we don't really do this in a way that gathers a lot of public input, it's hard to know what everybody would think,
Right.
other than just represent our own values. If we were choosing at the kitchen table, I guess.
That's
what I'm
why
saying.
they elected you, to make
Yep.
those tough choices. Is there anybody else who'd like to
Well, I
weigh in
think
on
I
it?
have some questions, two questions. So Ms. Brandestor talked about not being sure what the consequences will be depending on the outcome of the trial because it's not done yet. So Doug, can you tell us what you foresee as possible negative consequences?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen if the company will be penalized or what. I mean, I'm not privy to what's going on. I mean, we do know that, you know, the Speaker of the House is down in the Butler County Jail. He was largely responsible. The other person that whose name escapes me right now is also in the Butler County Jail, I believe. But no one with Energy Harbor or First Energy has been charged. But they have stated that this investigation is not closed. That I do know. So, you know, it's up to you. But now, if we're not going to act on it tonight, we'll need to basically table it because this is written up with Energy Harbor because the prices change daily. I made the assumption that we went with them before, that we would go with them again, but that's up to council. And we are cutting it close because, you know, it takes Duke about 2 or 3 weeks to get us this list.
Oh, they're fast with this.
Huh?
It was a sarcastic comment.
Yeah, you know, and then we turn it over to Energy Harbor, and then they get the letters out, and we have to give a period of time, and I think we give them close to 2 or 3 weeks to make a decision, you know, if they want to opt out of the program.
I guess
Anyone
just in
else?
the future, I wonder whether if either we would have criteria or, for example, I mean, sometimes we talk about budget things where, like, we have a different resolution for each and we vote for one and vote the other two down. You know, I guess if there were meaningful choice, and that's why I was asking the question last time, if there's a meaningful difference between the companies, is there a choice? And I think ultimately, like, the price differences are so not so great that there isn't a meaningful choice between the companies.
You've made that clear, yeah.
So, thank you.
Go ahead. Glenn?
Sitting up here, better part of a decade doing this thing, I have learned that there are certain kinds of things that you make sure that you inject your value into. For example, clean energy. Most people in this town, at least in my opinion, go, you know what, clean energy's good. When you start getting that granular that you're not trusting your staff to make certain decisions, or you're projecting your own value on the other staff members on how to pick things, that's where at least personally I draw the line, because it's very easy to do that up here by just voting it. So with that being said, I would like to call the question.
Well, okay, but if you call the question, it'll take a vote. Because I think there are other individuals who would like to say something on it.
If nobody
So-
seconds it, it's very easy to.
Yeah. Is there a second to the question? Okay. But there is, on the record, I think, an indication that we should wrap this up, and I think that's probably the case. I'll just make my comment. I don't trust anybody with any energy company, pretty much, period. I don't trust them. On the other hand, I think we should do the best that we can do for the citizens of Oxford, and I think the city staff did the best job they could to find the lowest and best price. And I think I understand where people are coming from. On the other hand, the individuals who were involved in that no longer are associated with the company, and the legislators are in jail where they belong. So I'm okay to go forward, because otherwise you're saying, well, if they have a difficulty and they get rid of the bad actors, then they can never be in business again. And I don't think that's a reasonable position to take.
I don't think that's the position we're taking. This just happened. It's not granular. It's the largest bribery scandal in Ohio history by a lot. It cost us more than $1 billion. It's huge. And I think it's a shared value. It's just in this case, we had staff mostly looking for price, which makes sense because that's usually what we care about. It's just in this particular situation, we happen to have a really, 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 really bad actor. And we have a choice between an option. It isn't a bad actor as far as we know. And it's slightly more expensive. So I don't think it was disrespectful to consider this. I think it was more disrespectful to try to call the question and stop the discussion.
Can I ask one more question? When we're talking about this price difference per kilowatt hour, what does that tangibly mean, kind of per month or per year for city customers?
I don't have a calculator.
Sorry.
Just take
I
9,000.
have my phone if you want.
If somebody does take 9,000 times, let's see the difference here. Well, once again, I'm not recommending that we go with Constellation because they only gave a 12-month and 18-month. No, I take that back. They gave a 24 months. So the difference there would be 0.0067. So 67 thousandths of a cent. It's not a whole
Is
lot.
that it?
But if you take it times the number of kilowatt hours that we purchase as a
I
city
thought
as
it
a
was
whole,
6
it's-
cents.
Yeah, I thought it was the difference between like 7.2 and 7.6.
I did too.
7.6 or something.
So I thought it was like 0.6 of a cent.
No, here's the price again. Constellation for the 2 year is 7.79 cents, and Energy Harbor is 7.12. So a difference of
That's 0.67, not 0.0067.
I thought the difference between Energy Harbor and Dyne Energy was closer.
Yeah,
That
and
was
Dyne Energy,
a
the
year
18 months
18
were like
months.
7 point.
yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that.
That's apples and oranges.
We've never done an 18 month. I don't know how it would work out.
So my question is the issue there that it's in the middle of years, or is it that it's a short amount of time that we would have to come back?
I think it's in the middle of the second year. I mean, you're not going 2 years. You're going 1 year.
Right.
We'll get a list, and it's only going to be good for 6 months. You're going to really confuse people. We get a lot of phone calls at City Hall about this program. You know, signing up that you don't get, that we take, that we handle. You know, if you remember, I didn't favor this program in the beginning because people could pick their own suppliers. We had the League of Women Voters that really wanted this program. And of course, I could see the benefit, but of course, we didn't hire additional staff to manage this program. We do use an energy broker that helps us get the pricing from certified residential electric suppliers, but I would strongly urge you to stick with a 2-year contract. I probably would have recommended a 3-year, but we're waiting to see with BQ Energy if there is something that we can work out with the solar farm there. And so that's the reason for the 2-year, but 18 months I see as real problematic for us.
I agree with that. I know how tough it's been on staff and the confusion. And by the way, there's going to be more because there's going to be a hike in energy period costs, even with Duke. And so you're going to get lots of calls regardless if we get
That's
the
why
best
it's
price
good to
or
be
not.
locked in.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Absolutely.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the resolution? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. Nay.
Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you very much. We'll move to the second resolution. You can read it.
A resolution waiving the tree survey requirements of the City of Oxford zoning code.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Doug, you want to take us through that? And we have something on our table.
Sure.
Is this different?
Well, I don't know what you have on your table.
It's the resolution. I just don't know if it's any,
It's updated for your packets.
Oh, that just had to do
Yeah.
with the misspelling.
just a misspelling. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks. So, city staff and I have been working, meeting with representatives of the Oxford Hotel Group, LLC, for the past 3 months. They have proposed a hotel on land outside the city of Oxford, corporate boundaries. And as you know, the city requires that the property be annexed in order to provide water services. A petition for annexation was approved by the Butler County Commissioners on August 7th, 2023. City Council must wait 60 days before considering an ordinance or resolution to accept the annexation. The developers have applied to the Oxford Planning Commission for a conditional use permit to construct the hotel. The Planning Commission, as you know, tabled the application at the August 8th meeting in order to obtain additional information. So the city of Oxford requires a tree survey for non-residential developments. In order to allow this project to proceed before the annexation is complete and a conditional use is decided by the Planning Commission, I recommend that City Council grant a waiver to the Oxford Zoning Code Section 1148.05B2A to relieve the Oxford Hotel Group, LLC, from the tree survey requirement on condition that a Planning Commission recommended and council approved landscaping plan is fulfilled prior to the installation of a permanent water meter for a hotel and prior to the issuance of a final certificate of occupancy for a hotel. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Is most of this land that they would be clearing tree covered, or is it mostly scrub? And
I've not walked it, but
I've walked it.
I spoke to people that have, and a lot of it is scrub. And Sam has a site plan that he could put up, and I think he is doing that now. That can kind of give you an idea. You know, you have trees between Miami University's property and the hotel project that, you know, are to the right.
Right.
You're facing it, and then to the top or the north, there's trees there. But a lot of it is scrub brush because, as you know, a church exists there, Baptist Church. Unfortunately, through the years, it has also become a dump site for construction materials that has covered up some of the stormwater facilities there. So, you know, this will be a great improvement for that site. And, you know, keep in mind, if you, let's say, compare this to the Hampton Inn, which I think would be a comparable hotel, that's valued at $5.7 million, which brings in about $90,000 a year in property tax taxes. And then also, if you look at our hotel and lodging fee, you know, this could bring in, you know, $150,000. Now, we don't keep 100% of that. 50% of that goes to Joy Oxford, 50% comes to the city. So, you know, I think this is something that is an economic development project for the city and is good. And we've been trying our best, staff and I, to work with them to move this forward. So, you know, I would recommend that you waive this tree survey requirement because they will need to present.
that'll enable them to get started, but they would still have to go through planning
Yes.
in order to get, okay. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to address this particular resolution? Yeah, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Cameron. My address is 5258 Morning Sun Road, Oxford, Ohio 45056. The top horizontal black line, or almost horizontal, is the border with my property. I have met with the developers to make some requests, but I would like to say that I have no objection to the waiving this requirement, with the understanding that it'd be conditioned on having to go through the planning commission and get the city council approval for a landscaping plan, to give us some, privacy along that border. So, but I have no objection as a neighbor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to address this resolution? Okay. Would anyone on council like to address the resolution?
I have a question for you, Doug. We still have the ordinance that when something gets cut, they have to plant the equivalent radii of trees, correct?
Sam, do you want to answer that for me? You're more familiar with our tree ordinance than I am.
We do, but it's only for trees that were not approved to be removed or were not exempt. So any area that's part of the developed area where there's buildings and paving, those are exempt from being surveyed and from being having a replacement. But if it's a tree that was beyond the disturbed area that was removed during the process, like a change order or some kind of a field change that wasn't approved, then there has to be accommodation for that and a replacement for those.
Okay. That was my question.
Okay. Did you have anything?
Oh, I was just going to say, I watched the planning commission meeting where some of this has already been discussed, and just, I could hear the values of council reflected in the values of the planning commission, so I feel good about having planning and us approve some sort of landscaping plan.
Okay. I'll go to Jason. You were at the planning.
Sure. Yeah, I was at planning, and I'm one of the members who specifically asked that it not be waived. But I'm happy with the conditions here that it goes back to planning, so the same people get to review it. And also, I believe that we're going to have the county engineer also get approval for any trees that are removed outside of the area, right? As I understand it from internal communication. So with that, it has my support.
So here's a question, which is this has to go back to planning commission anyway in September, right? So is the waiving of this to expedite this in terms of time, or is this more just as a financial, relieve them from a financial burden? Because it won't even be clear until the planning commission approval about what areas of the site really need to be cleared, right? I mean, I was watching the planning commission meeting. It was not, I didn't watch it in every single minute. How firm are we that the site layout that we currently have is what it is? Or is that, potentially subject to continued revision? So that was kind of a question for me in terms of communication with the, do we have any confidence of what portion of the site's being developed? What does that put at risk? I mean, again, without a tree survey, it's hard to know what you're dealing with. I mean, I was looking at the site from the outside because there's no trespassing sign, but much of it is scrub, but there are mature trees mixed in there. And so I guess to me, if the conditional use is tabled anyway and there can be no progress made on that, in theory, could a tree survey be conducted in the next 30 days? Again, does waiving this speed it along, or does it just relieve them of the financial burden of doing the tree survey?
I mean, I can't speak for them. They can speak for themselves, but obviously they want to get started on the project. And of course, it does cost money to do such a survey. I feel comfortable with this. We had somewhat of a waiver for Al's Landing. We're going to make certain that they, have some trees that separate the property owner that just spoke in the north. That'll be in the landscape plan. My experience is most developers do not want to remove all the trees on the site because it adds value to it, and if they don't need to, they won't.
Yep.
But it's going to, they're going to be removed where they're going to be building the facility and the infrastructure and the parking area. So,
I think what it does, to answer Dave's question, is it gives them the opportunity to start their project. If we delay the whole thing for another month, then they still have to do that process, and now they're into winter, and they're probably going to find that it's not feasible to do. So maybe they'll just put up something by right within the county, which could be a storage unit.
But I guess what I'm trying to say, does this tree survey delay them? If they had to do it, could they do it tomorrow or the next? I mean,
They can't clear the property without us waiving.
Okay. But I guess what I'm also saying is that they're clearing in anticipation or guessing what the final site layout will be, right? This is not an approved thing, it's tabled at Planning Commission, so anywhere where they're bulldozing is just anticipating where they're going to be
I
building.
don't know that there was a lot of disagreement over where the project was going to be.
But I'm just saying it's anticipation. So, I mean, I guess my feeling is I'm not going to die on the hill of the trees because so far I'm not really clear that our tree ordinance has protected a single tree. Because we waive the detention basins, we waive the construction areas, we waive the roadways, so in the end, I'm not sure it's influenced the decision of where someone sites things, and I'm not sure it's necessarily produced more mitigated trees. I don't want to slow the project based on that. I guess I'm just saying that if it's just truly about, if it were slowing the project, then I'm 100% behind it. If we're just leaving them a burden so they can go in and start clearing stuff in anticipation where things are going to go, that seems to me that would lead to less care about where, what you would do is you would just bulldoze everything, right? Because you don't know where the site layout is going to be, so when the plans come in September, you're good to go. And without a site plan, you don't know what you have. And so the final question I have is that, what's involved in the site plan? Because I believe in our ordinance, there's the formal idea of measuring each individual tree, but isn't there kind of a staff where you can do a site? I'm trying to look at is there a tree analysis light that doesn't involve a forester doing a DBH analysis of every tree? Could you look at the site and say, this is a steep slope, you should leave that alone, or this is a heavily forested area? Is there anywhere in between, Sam?
Being that this was a conditional use, it didn't go to Butler County Soil and Water. Subdivisions and planned developments, we do send to Butler County Soil and Water for analysis on those things. Okay. Environmental constraints, steep slopes, those kinds of things. But there hasn't been all that has been done is they've delineated vegetated areas and haven't done any type of a survey. So the tree survey has been beneficial in the sense that it has been a negotiating tool for requesting more landscaping to be done. But beyond that, we haven't really seen that much survey work being done except for around the periphery of sites where it's obvious that there are mature woodlands. Yeah. So like in the case of Owl's Landing, there was a mature kind of tree area around the farmstead site. The rest of it was fence rows around the perimeter. And in this case, it's really hard to tell without doing a survey because it's a pretty large piece of property that's kind of secluded.
Well, that's the thing. In a different world, we would do site visits or things like that because I think you learn a ton by walking over a property to see what's there. What is the big old wolf tree that's on the edge of the slope that ought to be protected? But often our development proceeds without necessarily us having seen it, and sometimes the developer has barely even. So anyway, I guess I'll stop talking now. I'm just.
Okay. Amber?
I have a question, Doug. At the very end of, on page 60, it says that the landscaping plan is fulfilled prior to installation. What does fulfilled mean? How are you defining that?
Well, I borrowed that language from Sam. I think what we had in mind is that the landscaping plan gets approved by the Planning Commission and the council, and that they follow through on it.
On planting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my question. So it's plants in the ground.
Correct.
Yeah.
That we have to see that happen before any kind of water connection.
Which they would do anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the city manager's wise words are, if you have big trees and you have this commercial development, you want to protect those trees if you can. I was part of the planning process for Farmer Hall on campus, and they designed the entire building around keeping trees. And they're so valuable to have large trees that we hope that they will indeed do that. And I see them nodding that that's what they want to do. So I think we should do this. If I can give my 2 cents, I think we should do this so that they can get going and we can get a hotel there, which is what everybody wants. Okay, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. Resolution is adopted. We'll move to Resolution C.
A resolution authorizing the School Resource Officer Program Memorandum of Understanding between the Talawanda School District and the City of Oxford, and authorizing the city manager to sign the Memorandum of Understanding on behalf of the city.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we got JJ here to take us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a late request from the Talawanda School District to add a part-time school resource officer at Kramer. As you know, they had originally cut that position out, where we've had that in the past. So this is the contract. This is why it's kind of coming to you late in the season, because we were still working those details out. But this is the contract, which would put 2 full-time school resource officers at the high school and the middle school, and then a part-time one at the Kramer Elementary. We've adjusted the rates to be a more comparable rate to what's charged by the Butler County Sheriff's Office for the deputy that they're going to have at between Marshall and Bogan. So we have kind of scrambled to do some staffing changes with that, but we think we have a good fit there, and they're ready to start school tomorrow. And this was approved at the Talawanda Board of Education meeting last Thursday by their board.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Okay. Is there any counselors who would like to discuss this resolution? Are you ready to vote?
I'll just say briefly, the public speaks glowingly about our school resource officers,
Yeah.
and many, many families and individuals with this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think council's opinion is yay.
Yeah, this is a much better conversation than one that we might have had, which if we had been asked to bear the full cost of it, that would have been a very difficult conversation, and so, yay.
Yeah. All right. All those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted. We'll move to ordinances. We have 3 ordinances on first reading. You can read the first one.
An ordinance approving the final subdivision application and record plat for Heron Pond with conditions.
Okay, and we have Sam to take us through that.
This is the formalization of what had been previously approved. And so for those of you who may not recall, I'll put the preliminary plan on the screen there. The change that was requested and was agreed to was to remove one of the lots that is over the driveway of Cobblestone. And so that removes that the one line that is here. This lot would have been accessed by the driveway, and so that's going to be transferred back for access to the church as it currently is used. And so the record plat doesn't show that. And so this approving this would simply allow the developer to move forward and record the lot as it was approved. And as long as the financial security is submitted and the easements are recorded and everything is done, this is really a formalization of what has already been approved. But it's something that has to be done in order for it to be recorded.
Thank you very much, Sam. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this ordinance? While you're deciding and while Michael's coming up, this is first reading, so we will see it at our next meeting where there will be votes on it, so there's no votes on first reading.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of City Council. I'm Mike Rudolph from 200 Morgan Circle out in South Farm. I'm here tonight as president of the South Farm Homeowners Association. As we have all along through this process, I just wanted to offer our agreement with the proposal up there. We're looking forward to this moving forward and adding more homes out to South Farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address this ordinance? Okay. This will come back again, and we'll give it a chance for council to weigh in if you would like. Anybody have questions or comments? All right, we'll see it at our next meeting. Would you read the second ordinance, please?
An ordinance amending the future land use map of the Oxford Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan from preserves and green space to employment corridor for one parcel of land totaling 4.67 acres known as Mary Day Park, located at 55 Rays Way in the city of Oxford, Ohio.
Okay, and Sam?
Thank you. So we had a pretty active planning commission meeting last week, and so I've got two items from planning commission that are on the same agenda here, and I'm just going to present them together if that's okay. They're related. So you may recall the council ordinance to expedite the rezoning for the Mary Day Park property a few weeks ago, for the potential partnership with St. Mary's Development Corporation, a affordable housing corporation. And so we applied on their behalf as staff for that. And because of the new comprehensive plan, future land use map, we felt it was also appropriate to look at the future land use map in the comprehensive plan to see if there was alignment. And there was not, so we applied for that as well. So this is a new request that you haven't seen before, neither had the Planning Commission, to amend the future land use map in the comprehensive plan. So that was how it was adopted, that if it was going to be changed, that needed to be done by ordinance. So we're talking about the Mary Day Park property on Rays Way. And so I've got a screen showing where that is. And so the comprehensive plan shows that property, the future land use of it. When it was adopted, there was no anticipation of there being any changes for it. So preserves and green space was the character type that was identified. There's 12. So this is the vision map for the community showing what we want to be in the future. And so that helps give guidance to how development should look and ultimately how the regulations should be set. And zoning is one of those regulations. So looking at the map, you can see all the green are appropriately preserves and green space. And so it's, for that reason, it's different than the zoning map. So it gives the vision, so there's not direct connection and alignment in the wording of the labels for those two, because the zoning is the law, and then the future land use is the guide or the vision for that. And so the character types, and there's 12 of those. Preserves and green space happens to be the first one, and of course it doesn't accommodate or envision there to be any type of development, whether it's residential or commercial. And the zoning happens to be general business. It was probably part of a redevelopment effort, perhaps when Walmart was done along College Corner Pike. We're not sure exactly when that was put in place, along with property that before it was in city ownership. It had been zoned general business for a long time. So the zoning that's currently in existence doesn't actually line up with the vision. So I'll skip through the next slide, and then the last slide shows what our recommendation to Planning Commission was that ultimately was not passed on to City Council, but we're still here tonight to make a final decision at the next meeting. But employment corridor would be a vision that would support a rezoning for a multifamily, because multifamily in a employment-centric area is a secondary use that could be supported. And so our recommendation was R4 zoning for that. But before we get to that, there has to be the future land use. So going back to the aerial view, you can see the context of the area. There are not decision standards for a future land use map amendment because it's not a regulation. So there weren't decision standards for that. However, the Planning Commission listened to a lot of comments. There's a lot of information submitted in the packet as well from neighbors and community members, and a representative of the family, Mr. Jacob Young, who originally donated the property to the city. Zooming in on the comprehensive plan future land use map, which I already showed you, you can see the surrounding designations. So again, this is not the zoning map, but this along College Corner Pike was the recommended, the staff recommended land use designation that would support a rezoning of some kind. And you can see that that's preserves and green space. And then the zoning is general business, and you can see there is some R3 around the area. R3 and R4 are almost identical in the regulatory wording of those. R4 would allow more dwelling units per building, but essentially it has the same setbacks and lot coverage as R3 would. That was the recommendation for that, which was also not recommended by Planning Commission. This is a site plan, and we're getting pretty far ahead of ourselves, but we wanted to include this because it was used in the Planning Commission presentation as well as to what would happen if this was being a city-owned property. What would happen if the future land use was changed, if the zoning was changed, if funding was approved by the state to help support a potential project. Even if it was city-owned and continued to be city-owned, would the park go away completely? And so the designer for the Housing Development Corporation sketched a conceptual site plan to show how some park land, some park facilities could be potentially retained. Obviously, the Planning Commission was not reviewing or approving a site plan, but I think that was something that was being questioned not only by the community but also by commission members as well. Okay, if the city continues to own it, if it was originally intended to be a park, then could there still be a park there? And so we went ahead and shared this as well with the commission. Jumping ahead to the zoning map amendment decision standards, the commission didn't find that any of the decision standards would be supported to recommend the zoning map amendment. And because the Planning Commission did not recommend the future land use map amendment either, that would be the comprehensive plan decision standard B, which would have supported that. So we went ahead and drafted legislation in the affirmative, even though the Planning Commission did not recommend either one of these. That way you would have the option of making the final decision. So happy to answer any questions, fill in any gaps.
Just one real quick question, then we'll go to the public. The previous proposal for this property was the one-stop center for TOPS and FRC.
Yeah, I think that was in 2019.
Right. So would that be consistent with an employment corridor description, and that is already, I assume, supported by a general business zoning?
It would.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to address? Yeah. First, we're going to have Jessica, the mayor noted.
Good evening. I just wanted to add a few more comments. I want to acknowledge that this is a really hard decision. So I believe we as a city deeply value the quality of life that comes with parks. We also have a goal of affordable housing. And this parcel is kind of the one that we own right now that has potential to score for a larger grant-funded affordable housing development. The scoring criteria are near social services, near public transit, near grocery and pharmacy, and near employment. There are other areas around town that also score, but we don't own the land, so it's just important. When we brought this forward as a resolution a few weeks ago to explore this rezoning, we were looking at St. Mary's Development Corporation was reviewing the first draft of rules released by the Ohio Housing Financing Agency called OFA. And they were like, wow, Oxford is going to score well. Let's consider this, which is why we brought this forward and asked for the expedited review. Then they had draft 2. Still looking good. Oxford looks like we're a contender. They went ahead and invested money to develop the site plan so we could have these conversations. Then they released the final rule, and there were big changes. And sometimes it happens. And with those big changes, we were no longer a high-scoring community. And so they called us and said, we probably need to not apply this year. It just really wouldn't be worth the expense to apply and then probably lose. These are very, very competitive grants. But they did ask us to continue with the rezoning, and the reason is they feel like there will be another round of application available in 6 months to a year, and we would have to do this anyway, so this still puts us in position. So I kind of just want to reaffirm, what does a yes mean and what does a no mean? So a yes means that it would be rezoned, and we would be prepared to apply for a future grant in the future. And if there's not a grant that comes along, then it just stays the same. No means that you kind of feel like this location is not the right location. And that's okay too. But what that does mean is that our housing efforts will likely slow down, become smaller, and rely on public-private partnerships. We probably knock ourselves out of city-owned land that we can apply for state funding. And that's okay. I just want you to be aware of what that means. We did work hard with the St. Mary's to talk about trying to save a portion of the land as a park. And what they propose on this site plan, it's kind of hard to tell when you look at it, but if you hold up the measurement, the scale, it is about a football field. So it's a football field size that is preserved as a park. Casey Waddell and I spoke, and it is due for a new playground. It's time in the life of a playground for a new one anyway. And so we talked about that we would try to maybe move the playground up to that top part, maybe even look at putting the shelter up there. It's near water, it's near shade. In my mind, it looks like Leonard Howell, which is tucked in around trees. It has a water fountain and things. And then that would leave the lower area as green space and possibly a future trail connection. So really open to whatever you want to do. It's a hard decision, but I kind of wanted you to know what it meant as far as housing opportunities for grants in the future. Thank you.
Can you help me just understand the map? Is the mobile home park to the right
Sam,
on that map?
can you show?
Yeah. Okay.
So the playground would stay adjacent to the mobile
Because
home
from
park.
here, I can't see what anything is.
Sorry.
I take it the L is housing.
Yeah, so here's the dead end of Ray's Way, currently in the little parking lot. And then this is the footprint. This is just a draft site plan, but yeah, the housing. And then this would be the football field that Jessica was referring to that could potentially be separated off as parkland only.
Thank you.
And I do want to add to Jessica's comments, thank you for the history. If this is not approved, then it couldn't be pursued again at this location in rezoning of a similar type of zoning for a year.
I don't understand that.
So if you decide not to rezone this next meeting, change a future land use and rezone, the way our code is worded, once it's denied, then it has to be a 1-year wait before it can be reapplied for the same type of rezoning in the future.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public, now that you understand what it is, who would like to address it? Yeah, come on forward. And like before, just give us your name and where you live, and we'll give you 5 minutes.
Jacob Young, 6462 Contreras Road. So last week I was here at the August 8th meeting with the Planning Commission, and Councilor Brocken brought up an excellent point. Since we are no longer under a deadline, and I'm not exactly sure when in 2019 we kind of went away from the tops, whether it was pandemic or whether it was actually regulation that was keeping them from being able to proceed with potential site plans such as this. I think at the moment we need to give tops another opportunity, and we can only do that by keeping it zone general business for them to have access to the property. So since we're not at an expedited deadline like we were before, and they need it till September, I see no reason why we can't do another expedited process in August again to kind of go through this same situation, give St. Mary's another opportunity if we so have a high score again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to address it? Welcome, Mike.
Good evening. Mike Smith, 6458 Contreras Road. And I just want to say I'm opposed to any land use change that might lead to the loss of this park. In my book, the bigger picture is, and I'm going to use we in this because I'm not blameless in this. We built a community park that is only accessible by car unless you are very wealthy. We built a $5 million aquatic center that might as well be on the moon for all the kids in the trailer park know because they can't get there. We're building a $15 million plus bike trail that probably won't get anywhere with these people. anywhere near them. So we build all these great amenities, but we're kind of saying, none of these are for you because they're not going to be anywhere near you. And now we're thinking about taking 3/4 of their park. I applaud staff and I applaud us trying to move the needle on affordable housing, but I just don't think this is the right project. I mean, I know what we're trying to do. I get it all, and I know this is a hard decision, but the people of the trailer park have so little as it is, and I would approve even more improvements to that park. We say it's underutilized, but it hasn't been upgraded in a very long time. A soccer field might be nice. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Is there anyone else who would like to address this ordinance? Okay, councilors, have any questions or comments?
Can I ask for our planning commissioner to kind of summarize the conversation?
That's where I was going to go.
The video is available, but it was a long meeting, so if you could.
Yeah, this was a really tough one, and I was a dissenting vote on this. We were torn because of multiple things, including what was originally meant by the gift of the park to the city and what was wanted with that. I think that was a big and very real point to take into account. We also were concerned that there was this park that we would take up a large portion of with this development, though counter to that, most of it is underutilized, which might be our fault, but the pieces that are useful and would still be quite large, the size of a football field, would still be available. On the other side, this is a huge opportunity that we don't have. We don't own that much land, specifically land that could be used for affordable housing, which is our greatest need locally, and one that scores well with grants and is in a good location. And this met all that. Another consideration was that we heard a lot from the public from different angles. Some of it was about the objection of how the park is used. Some of it was about getting rid of some of the land that was local. I think a lot of it might have been NIMBYism, which was sort of upsetting specifically to me because some of the people concerned about this are the same people who, if they were trying to move it today, would not be given the same chance because of that same kind of resistance. I think some of this, the resistance was property values, which was disappointing because I know how many people would be helped by a project like this. But there were also, like I said, very real, reasonable objections to this. And so it was voted down and I was the dissenter, but also I was conflicted as well.
So what is your view for the best use of the park?
I think in terms of the best use, this is probably it. But if it's not going to happen, I would really like to see FRC Tops One Stop Building go there because it will help with the sustainability of them going forward. I would love to do both. That's why I got so excited when I thought that was an option at first. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Anyone else like to address this?
Can I ask some staff questions before
Sure.
I weigh in?
Go right
so
ahead.
first is on just to separate the planning from the zoning. The first is what should our plan say that the future land use should be? I was curious, did you at all consider the campus designation? Not necessarily because it's Miami, but the campus designation in terms of the typology of like parkland and green space. I believe the Planning Commission recommended the hotel be designated, if that was the vote. Did you look at the campus? And maybe it doesn't make a difference, but I'm just wondering if there was another option other than employment corridor that would capture what I'm hearing in any case will become mixture of uses of park and housing.
No, we didn't. Just looking at the uses, the campus, it didn't have multifamily in there, but I think there's some similarities. Yeah, but no, we didn't.
Okay, and then the other thing is I think that just for clarification, this is very distinct from a rezoning of a private piece of property in which a person would have rights to, and then we're the lessor, right? Like we have control ultimately, whether it's through conditional use over the. I mean, what are we talking about with St. Mary's? Are we signing over a parcel, or is this going to be a planned site that we're going to be? However, the mix would be, we would be right there along the way with the veto power over the outcome, right?
Yeah, our plan was to continue to own the property and do a long-term lease. So we would have veto power over the design as well and control the long-term usage of it. But St. Mary's or any other type of housing developer would be the operator and the responsible party for maintaining it during the lease terms.
And so the final question of that is that in terms of if we were to mix uses on this site, the design would be really super critical. Like all those little details that we go through, how would that be a conditional use that we would do? Or we control the site, so we would want that design review. How would that happen?
It would be part of the lease terms. So the R4 and the R3, as long as there is not any type of discretionary approval needed, there wouldn't be any public hearing for it.
But I'm saying, like, if we don't contemplate, if it's either or, it's we don't have any control over its park. But if there is control, what role would, for example, would the Planning Commission have input? Would we have input on the design?
So council would be authorizing the city manager to sign a lease agreement. It could be through that, or council could direct the city manager or the Planning Commission to do a review of the site plan. Any of those would be possible.
Input on the
Could be. Yeah.
Okay. I presumed it would sort of go forward like the cottage community in which we've leased out. Okay.
You would have to direct it that way as a council because it wouldn't be in the code that way.
Wouldn't be inherent. Okay.
Okay, are there other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have some comments. I came to the planning meeting, sat in the back. I had to leave before the vote, but it was moving to hear all of the different input that people gave, wanting the green space. And when we think about the history, as Mr. Smith said, moving things further away, and also when there was an opportunity for a trail to be brought close to that area, there was a lot of pushback from members of the community on another part of town not wanting the trail to go through. I also remember when we had a work session, we were talking about ways to get more affordable housing in the community, and one of the things that, Jessica, you asked us is, would we have the will, basically, to support staff, understanding that public input was important, but recognizing that these are really difficult decisions. When I was here for the planning meeting, I don't know, I think I thought of it as an all or none. Did you say you did not show the plan with the football field size park? You did, okay, I may have left before that. But this changes the perspective for me a little bit, knowing that there is the opportunity to have a sizable amount of land for recreation, for park space. I still have to weigh a lot of things because this is a big discussion, and it was important to hear the community's input on this as well. One of the things that I was thinking about too is that the argument for saying that parks would be harder to get to is a similar argument that we could say if we moved an affordable housing community elsewhere in the community, that it would be harder to get to the services that they would need, or the grocery stores. So either way, something's going to be challenging to get to, but I think having a football field size space that is well maintained, that has quality, park equipment in it, and good plantings softens that a little bit for me. I think the other thing I want to say now, rather than waiting till comments at the end, is that what often happens, regardless of how this gets voted at the next meeting, what often happens is people come to meetings and they voice their opinion, and then if something goes their way, then it ends. What we need in this community is consistent conversation around these things, because we need to have solutions that bring all of our perspectives together, and going from meeting to meeting to have these conversations is very difficult, and city council meetings are not great places to have actual dialogue about this. So I do want to highlight the Oxford Area Solutions for Housing that's been having monthly meetings. It's at the Seminary Church on August 28th. That's their next meeting from 5 to 7 at the corner of Church and Poplar. So I see some people writing this down. I'll say it again. Oxford Area Solutions for Housing monthly meetings. The next one is August 28th from 5 to 7 at the Seminary Church at the corner of Church and Poplar. I think there'll be dinner early on. I hope to attend if I don't have a work-related conflict, and I hope everyone there attends. That's before our next council meeting. I think it would be a good place to have some conversations and to see what else we can do, if not this. But I'm still on the fence. I don't know. I may vote for this. I'll have to think about it and talk to some people as well. Thank you for all your work on this so far.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add one comment, and this is a knotty problem, and I totally understand where Jessica's coming from. On the other hand, I have trepidation to go against what one of our most important commissions has recommended. And so I think if we decide to pass this, we should do so very carefully and for very good reasons, because I think the presumption should be with what the Planning Commission recommended. I also think personally that the best use of it goes along with what Mr. Young suggested, which was, I think, in line with what the Day family would like to see, and that is the one-stop center there, and the rest developed into parkland. And I think that Mr. Smith's comments are very well taken, that area has been ignored for way too long, and we need to have that developed into usable park for the people who live in that area. So those are my comments, and those are the things that I'm thinking about. I agree that it's a very knotty problem. Let's move. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I thought you did.
No, I have some questions. But all right. So if I could, I mean, I really do. Out of deference, someone who spent so much time on the Planning Commission, I think they deserve deference for all the thoughts and hours. So I'm reluctant to go the other way. But I would say that, I mean, if I view this as an either-or problem, I'm not going to sign over an entirety of a park for anything. You know, the parkland is too valuable. But I also know, when looking at the size of the site and the current use of the site and literally the functionality, it's a oddly shaped parcel that was probably donated in part because it was less developable, and it was a wonderful donation. But right now, much of the park is just being mowed and provides doesn't seem like a lot of value. And we were comfortable with placing a social service agency on top of it not very long ago. So I guess what I'm just saying, though, is that a couple different things. One is whatever we call it in terms of the land use plan is probably going to be imperfect, but I think can capture the community sentiment. So whether we call this employment corridor, it's still our property to control. So the ultimate disposition is up to us, including what happens with the zoning. If we rezone this and we decide to do nothing with the park, the zoning is irrelevant to the park. You know, it doesn't change the trajectory at all. We control the site. So I guess what I'm saying is that if it's not an either or, and here's a couple that's not either or, it's you know, if you look at the size of the parcel, they've managed to propose a housing complex that occupies the least useful recreational land while leaving the best there. We also control, if it comes through this process, all the land that's currently maybe all the land that's currently be dedicated to parking doesn't need to be dedicated to parking. We could adjust that so less of the site is lost. If you think about how large our uptown park is, a well-designed park can provide a ton of value at a smaller space. You know, so a well-designed park that complements a well-designed housing complex could provide more recreational asset with less space if we invested in it. And then the final part is to Mr. Young's point. So far as I know, if we were to zone this R4, social service agencies are still a conditional use in R4, so it doesn't preclude TOPS from, you know, of us doing that. We're not choosing. I guess what I'm saying is
I don't know about that.
Well, so if it's
I've looked at that already.
If it's R4 conditional uses or community-oriented residential social service facilities, I don't know if that's the same.
Can we
thing.
have him?
It's not the same thing.
Okay.
Go ahead,
No.
Sam.
No, a community, a CORSIF or a community-oriented social service facility is more of a home that is for developmental disabilities or some type of group home. So it's not a one-stop center or a social service provider.
Okay.
So it would be a problem to have it rezoned and then have the TOPS facility there.
So it wouldn't-
Without some kind of a waiver or zoning code change, which we are rewriting the zoning code next year, but that's not
It
where
wouldn't
we're
count
at
as
right now.
professional offices either. There's a broad category called professional offices that are conditional uses.
I think there's a square footage limitation in that.
I guess my point is just going down the road, do we close off a pathway up front, or do we leave a pathway open, and at no point do we need to commit until we've signed the lease on a project that we're comfortable with? So again, I'm guess I'm with Councilor Franklin that I will want to maintain an open mind in deference to the Planning Commission, but I'm not ready to say no on the potential here yet.
Glenn?
I grew up poor. I agree with everything that Mike said. Like, I remember doing this kind of stuff where you knew where the places that you couldn't go were. And you knew where the places that you could go were. And I know, too, a lot of people that I don't know, I'm sure that that park is the place where they know they can go and they can have fun. I believe it's very underdeveloped. And it's a very sticky argument to make to say that a park isn't useful when it's underdeveloped. It's kind of like a catch-22. So I would be more inclined to put resources towards that park to provide services for people that don't have the mobility that some of us do now. We have a lot of luxuries when it comes to things like that. Also, you have to respect the family that donated the land. You know, I don't know the family that well. I've heard of some of the people and some of the things that they've done, good things. We've adjudicated some of those things up here. They literally have said, we like this for the people right here. We've donated this. It might have been for some of the reasons that were already discussed, but when I hear a descendant of that family say, I would like social services to be adjacent to this park, and I would like to see the park be developed so that individuals can have some of those amenities that most of us take for granted, that's the direction that I would lean. And finally, I remember hearing some things that my fellow counselors have said regarding affordable housing. And what I mean, well, what I understand affordable housing when it is said is low-income housing, and that is to integrate it as opposed to having it in particular areas. So when we're working on these kinds of things and a proposal comes up that says, hey, let's create the highest density thing that we can have and then stick it on top of the one place where individuals can go for recreation, that causes me pause. Now, all that being said, all we're doing is just changing the name of stuff here. So I don't mind any of that. It's just, if I'm still on council when it comes to actually putting a development on there, I would probably have pause.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. This is definitely one of those, like, I'm really happy it's a first reading so that we have time to think about it. But I do want to touch on the fact that Mr. Young did attend Rec Board this week, getting some practice in now that he's actually on Rec Board. And we did discuss this very briefly, and Casey shared that it is in the plan for parks next year to really spend some time and attention with Mary Day Park. So we would be seeing a more robust use of that space anyways. And as we think about a football field, I'm trying to kind of put it in terms of like Leonard Howell Park, because that's kind of the approximate, right? That's the facsimile that was given. And Leonard Howell looks so open right now because it has the field and the trail and like vast open space. So I'm trying to like, just conceptually, like a football field is, you know, a chunk of space, but if you take Leonard Howell and you like block it off completely, does that feel as functional a space as it does now? So just, you know, something that I'll be thinking about. And I mean, I live right across the street, so I will probably also be popping over to the space to check it out myself. So if anybody wants to join, let me know.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Could I get some clarification? So obviously we're not voting today, but if we vote in the affirmative or the negative, is it both a year before we can make changes? Right, so you started out suggesting that there would be a year if we were to vote one way, but I was wondering if we vote either way, is there a restriction on when we could?
Affirmative, no, wouldn't have that restriction, would not.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll go to read the third one, which we've now generally discussed already, but please read it.
An ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Oxford, Ohio for 4.67 acres of land known as Mary Day Park, located at 55 Rays Way, from General Business District to R4 Multifamily District.
Okay, and Sam has already discussed it. I would open it up. This is one of those rare occasions where you get another shot at it if you have another comment that you'd like to make. Okay, seeing none. Counselors, do you have any additional comments you want to make? Go ahead, Dave.
So I guess we discussed that we have recently purchased a piece of property that it's potentially developable. We indicated our preference for this location over the other one, but I don't think we shut the door on the other location. I could just talk me through whether, I mean, is there a plan B for this if it's not the park?
We would continue to look at, I'm going to say Chestnut Street as a possible location for, and we need to look at affordable housing on that land because we used ARPA dollars to purchase it, but it would not score well enough for this type of development. So when I said it would be smaller, that's what I was implying. So we would still look to develop that land as affordable housing, but it would be a smaller development, likely not to score for a large development. So we would have to be kind of creative in the funding we look for and that kind of stuff.
And not a partner like this, or potentially
Probably a smaller partner. Not to speak for all of them, but most of the affordable housing development companies are meant to be 50 plus units, so like that 42, 43 was small for them, but almost all are, it's just geared toward more urban, larger developments. It's the way the funding's set up.
Okay.
Don't shoot the messenger.
It's just another reason why things are so challenging for us here in Oxford, you know. Yeah.
It is.
I wish we had more land to play with. And I don't know how we need to, and it's difficult for us, but we just don't have enough playing pieces on the board to play this multiple complicated games we're trying to do to cite things and move things, so.
Okay. Thank you very much. And both of these knotty little problems will come back to us at our next meeting under second readings. We have no second readings tonight, so I'll move to announcements and communications and move to City Manager Doug Elliott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a brief thing I want to share with the public and the council. We reached an agreement with the representatives of Four Leaf Development last week on a proposal to finance the construction of the sanitary sewer for Lake Forest Drive. So I'll be bringing a resolution to City Council at the next meeting authorizing me to sign the agreement, and I'll provide the details then. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right.
Sorry.
Mike?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. Chief?
Just kind of in relation to the school resource officer resolution I had earlier, tomorrow I mentioned Talawanda starts, and you'll see significant changes in their schedule and in the busing and the transportation. So you can go to our Facebook page where we just posted for people to be more alert for pedestrians. We think there'll be much more people walking, and also, more traffic at the schools without the buses. Pay attention to things like the school zone speed. No turn on red signs. We see those violations where we'll have officers, working to stop those type of traffic infractions. But just in general, be more alert, and then also, watch for school buses. If you're not sure if you should stop, just stop, and make sure you follow those traffic laws. And then, of course, we're going to be getting, the town is already getting busier, so traffic congestion, parking issues can be frustrating, but just take some deep breaths as we go through that. So,
thank you. I might add, for people to pay attention to blinking yellow lights, like at Dana Drive, and when the kids press the button, that means you're supposed to stop and let them cross. And I've seen a lot of cases where the kids do the right thing and they press the button, and then the cars just zoom right on past, and you can't do that. So let's all pitch in and do the right thing. Heidi? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to the chief in the back. Okay, Casey, you're up. Casey's up to bat.
I've never heard that one. Well, good evening. I think I've passed on comments for 2 meetings in a row, so I had to come up and say a couple things. First, I do want to wish, with JJ mentioning kids going back to school, all of them a good school year. A big change for a lot of them, but the ones I've talked to, especially with the interactions at the park and the pool, and a lot of them are ready. They're ready for that structure again, and a lot of them enjoy that experience. So we wish them the best school year. With the school year coming, our schedule at the pool changes quite a bit, so we are closed Monday through Friday now. We are still open weekends. The weather has actually been our friend the last 2 days, since we probably wouldn't have opened anyways, but the weekend weather is looking like it's going to be great. So sometimes that goes against us, and sometimes it works in our favor. So right now it's looking like a great decision. I do want to thank Kiwanis for all of their work that they did to plan and organize the Back to School Bash we had at the Aquatic Center on Sunday. It was by far the biggest one we've had. There must have been at least 600 or 700 people that attended. I know at one point we counted 475 just inside the pool gates. That doesn't include the hundreds of people outside on the inflatables and eating and getting a free meal, free haircuts, free school supplies. So I just want to thank Kiwanis. I know Lions was also there, Tops was there, the Coalition was there, Talawanda was there. So it's just great to have all those resources there. And I believe at least one of our resource officers was in attendance. All 3 of them were there, plus Chief.
The chief was there.
Maybe not in uniform, but he was there. So, our ADA playground project is complete at the community park. If you haven't seen it, stop by and take a look. It's a huge change.
Looks great.
So a little background story on that. The whole project started simply because a mom came and said, "I've got a daughter. She's in a mobility device, and she's looking for just a way to play on a playground with her sister. She wants somewhere to play together." So we started looking at options. This whole plan sort of just, rose out of that. And I had a chance to talk to her on Sunday, just 5 days, I think, after we opened the playground, her and her daughter both, and she was just extremely thankful for having that here in Oxford, someplace to go and do that. And I don't know, her name is Rachel Henry. If you follow her on Facebook, she posted photos and videos of her family playing on the playground, and just we're really excited about that opportunity. So, and the last thing I just want to say is an apology from OPRD for anybody that felt disrespected or offended by the advertising of the cemetery tours. That was certainly not the intention behind any of that. I won't go into great detail because I think Councilor French will say a few things, but we just want to offer that apology that that was not what we were looking to do, of course, and hopefully we can clear all that up and move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sam?
With the student move-ins coming back, many of the property managers who have not been proactive and cleaned their apartments out may still be doing that. So for ones that, if you see areas that have had furniture or trash sitting that are not obvious, just let our department know. Anything vegetation related that needs trimmed, or anything in code enforcement that's not getting addressed, we've got multiple ways to take those complaints and follow up on them, so let us know.
Thank you very much, Sam. Jessica?
Nothing.
Okay. Heather?
Nothing, thank you.
Chris?
Nothing.
Okay. Glenn?
I would like to give a giant shout out and a giant thank you to everybody who was involved in all of the celebratory types of things and events that we've had in the past couple of weeks since our last city council meeting. And specifically the events that required, or not required, but the events that had Uptown shut down. I think that is a unique experience that everybody loves in town, and other individuals that actually come to town to experience and enjoy. And I hope that the as many events as we can do involve shutting down Uptown, because I think it's a unique experience in our town that I don't think any other place in Butler County really does something like that. And it's one of those creative placemaking types of things that makes Oxford a municipality of choice to go to when we have things like that. Another thing that I've been sitting here thinking about since last council meeting was the mural issue. So we were talking about that last meeting, and I brought up some B stuff regarding that. And I actually really want to, before I leave council, make sure that there's a concerted effort to at least have a mural, preferably a B-related one. And I'm wondering how we can go about putting that into motion. I'm guessing that I'll probably have to talk with Doug regarding a resolution of some sort. I see a couple nods up here on council, so that looks like I might get some support with something like that. I'm assuming that that's going to be dollars that are associated with either Parks and Rec or PACO or something like that, but I just hope that we can make that happen sometime next year. I know that we have a whole lot going on with the Eclipse thing and other stuff like that, but after that Eclipse stuff, I would love to see an effort towards hopefully bees and honey related things, but definitely a mural of some sort or a series of murals if our business owners or landowners are amenable to it. And finally, I have seen a lot of people in town say a lot of very hateful things that I don't know necessarily if they mean that, but you know, I always believe that the residents of Oxford are good intentioned and well mannered at heart, and that don't say things that are hurtful or look at things from a hurtful lens. And we've had a couple of experiences, you know, Casey talked about one of them, but that's just one of a couple that I've seen since last council meeting, where individuals are saying some things that I believe are taken way out of context to cause contempt. And I would just like to see individuals consider choosing grace over choosing conflict when it comes to looking at the intended message of various public statements from public officials. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Glenn. Alex?
I will start with a couple of fun things. I agree the attendance and like events uptown over the last couple of weeks have been really spectacular. And I was at the book sale at Lane Library that followed the Red Brick Friday, which was like the Scholastic Book Fair. And there was a mom who was talking about how great it was to have the street shut down and how safe she felt, like she could let her kids really kind of run around in the park and not have to worry so much about High Street. And I didn't say anything about being a council member. I just kind of creepily listened. But it was really nice to get very genuine, unsolicited, positive feedback for an event that we hold uptown. Second, I'm going to follow up on what Casey said and just talk a little bit about the cemetery tours. So first of all, I'm super sorry that the marketing plan and the flyer upset people. That was absolutely not the intention. The purpose of the event was to educate participants on the lives and history of notable Oxford and Miami community members. At no point did tour content contain references to ghosts or inappropriate or Halloween-oriented content. We chose October, including the weekend before Halloween, to try to leverage seasonal interest in events like cemetery tours to foster a sense of civic engagement and educate the public on Oxford's history. Similarly, I will own that the lantern-lit evening tours were perhaps a poorly considered gimmick that, again, were meant to kind of get people in who were interested and then teach them a thing or two while they were there. At no point was tour content written to sensationalize the cemetery or turn it into anything that it's not, which is a really notable historic feature in our town. The structure of the tours was to always be a walking tour in which participants would stay only on paved paths and remain in historic areas of the cemetery, avoiding those active places where those in our community may have recently laid a loved one to rest. We did plan to feature notable members of our community, including a Medal of Honor winner from the Civil War, a winner of the Merchant Marine Distinguished Service Medal from World War II, the men and women who founded our community, and those who helped make Oxford the town we know and love today. These events were modeled after similar tours that take place in Cincinnati's Spring Grove, who offer October tram tours, and Louisville's Cave Hill Cemetery, whose Cave Hill Heritage Foundation offer regular tours as well. I would like to sincerely apologize again for the misconception and around the intention of the event and the hurt it may have caused members of our community. What is particularly unfortunate is that lesson that I learned came at the expense of city staff. I would like to particularly extend an apology to all the employees at the city office, Parks and Recreation, and Smith Library as well, who received phone calls and comments on social media. I'm especially sorry because having heard the tone of some of those, I acknowledge that some of them were expressing profound hurt, and for that, again, I apologize, but the tone of some of those messages was probably much more inappropriate and harsh than it needed to be, and I feel terrible that that was directed at members of staff who I really appreciate the hard work that they do instead of at me. It was my idea. I own that. As for what's next, stay tuned. We're in conversations over the next 24 hours, but we'll have a decision after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it. Amber?
Yes, a few things to say. I want to offer my support to Councillor French. She's a young woman who chose to run for council. She was a student here. She was a server in restaurants. She worked in bartender. She was a bartender, and she lives here with her husband. And sometimes, you know, you want to try to do something different and creative, and it takes some time to find the sweet spot. But I often hear people wondering why we can't do things in Oxford that they do in other places. People go to other places to do some of these fun things. I appreciate the heartfelt sentiments that Councillor French said, but I'm hoping that the community can come together around this. There are a lot of, yes, Halloween is in October, but so is the various weekends and parents' weekends. There's a lot of activity in our town. As someone wrote in to public comment to say that there's a lot of good reasons to do something like that in October. I think it educates people and allows people to go back to where they came from when they were visiting and share things about the wonderful experience they had here. I think it can be done respectfully, bringing different parts of our communities together. So keep coming up with great ideas, okay? I really want to support you on that. It also excites me when fellow councilors support things that our commissions are doing. And so thank you, Councillor Ellerby, for supporting the work on PACO. Last year, one of our interns, Eli Davies, did some research on a bee muralist named Matt Willey, W-I-L-L-E-Y. He has a website called It's the Good of the Hive. So it's public art around bee murals and bee education. And so at our last PACO meeting, we were discussing that, and I'm excited that Councillor Ellerby expressed support for that, and anything that we can do to get some more funding for that or get more ideas around that would be great. Ox Chalks the Walks was a great success. We had a little bit of rain on Saturday, but it dried up in time for a really fun sidewalk chalk drawing experience, another wonderful placemaking experience. So I want to congratulate OCAC for that excellent work and to thank everyone who came out to support that. Finally, I'm already thinking ahead to the total eclipse of the parks. I bought my solar eclipse glasses already because they're just going to get more expensive as we get closer to the event. I already told my family about it. Some of them will probably come and stay here with me in Oxford. I recommend people get online or wherever you can get good solar eclipse glasses and do it sooner rather than later. Really looking forward to that.
I was just going to offer my support for all the comments already made, but I'll say something specifically. You have to be really careful when the eclipse comes around because a lot of fake glasses will be sold and then your retinas will burn. So please make sure they're actually certified glasses for eclipses. And other than that, I appreciate all the comments already made and I agree.
Dave?
So, I mean, I want to say a few things I wasn't thinking about, but I reiterate, well, change is hard. Doing new things sometimes comes with costs as well as benefits, and it comes with risks, which is why it can be comfortable to stay in your own lane. But, so this is why, for example, I really appreciate, like, closing off High Street was new for us and comes with costs. But the benefits I've seen, like, they just keep growing exponentially. And so when I see people, we're moving around the barricades, I know it costs an overtime and staff, but I think if we keep doing it, the vendors, like, they just keep growing exponentially. So I think if we can deal with some costs and risks, the benefits might flow. And I feel that, like, that applies equally, finding the right way to do something and dealing with it, but not saying no, mitigating the risks and doing it. So just in terms of change also, the chief talked about the kids going back to school. Our Parking and Transportation Advisory Board, we had some members and we did some kind of walk audits on the safe routes to school. The chief was there, the city engineer, and we were able to make improvements, and the staff was able to make improvements on some of the thorniest intersections, like right while we're there. So the intersection at College Corner Pike and Church, the timing is slightly less dangerous there for pedestrians, and we have new signage. So thanks for that, but I think that on the theme of change, Dana Drive, I have requested money be earmarked in the next upcoming budget because those rapid flash beacons, maybe that's the safe solution, but I mean, it's an easy solution, but might not be the best one. It might be more costly to do the better thing, but maybe we can embrace that. And I hope that city staff can also continue to look at how to, within the confines of the infrastructure we have, like signal timing, to make it safer for kids to walk to school and to not stop. I've also asked for some money to work with Telewan on crossing guards. You know, it's not going to be easy. There'll be some problems, but maybe we could do it. Final thing I want to say on change, which is I'm going to just keep hoping. I was thinking about former councilor Kate Curry's request regarding the cat spaying and neutering. In line on about a week after we got the question from Dr. Fuhrer about, like, well, how's the public's input and what are the schedule of the budget meetings? And I think about the budget and I understand why it's presented by the city manager to council and we have work sessions. But then I think, well, how could we change if we wanted to? If someone comes up with a good idea, like community assistance funding for spaying cats, can we make a change to work that in? Or are we like, this is the way we do that? I think about our procedure, like we invite people to watch our work sessions on the budget, but they can't really comment in the work session, and then in the meeting after they can express their thoughts, but we can't. So like, how can we build dialogue over something as important? I mean, can we not keep improving on the budget process so that we as representatives can have input on it, but also if people walk up and say, this is a great idea, we would love to see, hey, you city, why don't you spend money on this? Can we find a mechanism to make our budget process more democratic? It's not too late for the budget for 2024. There's costs in time, there are risks in getting more voices, but I'm just going to say that I'm hoping that we can find a way to lean on the side of, let's figure out how we can do something. And so, and our budget process, so again, like think of how we can improve the process, even looking towards the 24. All right, enough.
Thanks, Dave. I want to also commend Alex. I think it takes a lot of guts to try something new, and I think that it didn't turn out the way it was intended. Hey, that happens. But in this community, it's great that we recognize, hey, it didn't go the way it was intended, let's rethink it. And so I'm glad you're rethinking it. I hope you do it. And I hope that the community comes together and supports it when they see that she took the comments of the public seriously. And I think the things that I've heard you talk about look really good. So good job. I'm happy for you to do that. I wanted to pick up on something that Glenn mentioned about and others about the public art. I'm in some conversation with people on the Public Art Commission, and one of the things that I was traveling with former Mayor Mike Smith, and we were in a couple of different cities in Poland and Czech Republic and in Ukraine. And even in Ukraine, with all of their difficulties, they have public art. And it really makes a difference in the city. And I recall our discussions in the comprehensive plan about placemaking and about the things that we can do creatively to really improve the community. And I think that that's one thing that we can do. And I was in a discussion with a manager from Mac and Joe's, and we were talking about that alleyway that goes down. There are two really good candidates on either side of blank, ugly walls that could be turned into a really interesting placemaking opportunity, I think. And he indicated he thought Mac and Joe's would jump at the idea of being a part of it, and maybe somebody help me with the CJ's across the alley might also want to do that. I think it would be worth looking at that and doing something that incorporates both sides and maybe has outdoor seating for restaurants, and let's make it into something really good, and maybe that will start a ball rolling. So kudos to you, Glenn. I really appreciate that suggestion, and I'm on it as well. And I think we need to make it happen. We talked about it in our comp plan discussions. It's there, and I think we should take an opportunity to do that. That's all I have for tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned.